Hello!
Welcome to Movie Boners. Very exotic movie boners today.
Is exotic the right word?
Non-domestic. International.
Yeah, that'll work.
What beer are you drinking today?
Well, I may have failed you on the beer part, Jake. I
Okay.
kind of lazy, and our weekend was kind of full yesterday. Well, not full. Now I'm just kind of trying to give myself credit. I was lazy and did not make it to the liquor.
More than normal stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And liquor stores really aren't open down here on Sundays when we record. So I could not make it to the store to find an appropriate beer. So once again, I had to really reach and make a sad connection. But I think no, it's still sad. So I'm drinking a beer called Acoustic Metal. It's really tasty. It's from Austin Beer Works down here, which is a brewery that I've come to really enjoy. My reach for connection is it is a Czech style dark lager. So it's done in yeah.
No, I accept that. It's because the foreign influence of what they have created that we are now adopting as our own, as America often does, the melting pot of cultures.
Since you and I had early discussions on this episode that we're probably gonna blur some lines for this, try and BS our way through some choices. So I'm starting it off with this.
Okay.
What about you, bud?
Good. Started early. I like it. For me, I did go international, and I went with a beer from my favorite foreign country I've visited so far, product of Ireland. I went with Smithwick's and Sons Irish Red Ale, and it is very good. It's a very delicious red ale, and I'm a fan of it. It's good.
You know, it's awesome. I've had that beer.
What?
And it is really good.
Oh, yeah?
It's very, very good.
It is really good. I thought about the stereotypical Guinness. I do love a good Guinness, but this seemed more fun and different. Yeah. And I definitely like it.
I like it, Jake.
We need to check into the movie draft. And I am still in the lead.
Yeah.
But we not just started May, but we're pretty soon into May still currently when we recorded this. You have had Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes just came out, and it seems like as good as advertised, at least as far as the rating goes, and the critics and audience seem to agree it's pretty good, but box office has a ways to go there. If it's coming out soon, you'll have all of these movies. You have Furiosa as well, which I am excited about.
Yeah.
And I think it hurts me a little bit that The Fall Guy is kind of slumping at the box office, it sounds like. That is not going great.
Well,
no real thoughts there, huh?
Well, I'm a little shocked.
I keep seeing headlines saying like it's not a box office success by any means. I think it had a poor opening weekend, and it continues to be kind of average, even though everybody's raving about it. Everybody has loved it, and it seems like it's the kind of movie that's for everybody, which is very surprising.
Yeah. Man. I need these movies to fucking do something.
Yeah, so I'm at 7.12, and you're at a 6.675. I have just over $1.5 billion, and you just cracked the $500 million mark.
Fuck you, Dune 2.
Yeah, most of my box office is Dune 2 and Kung Fu Panda 4. The rest of them have been very small $100 million movies or less.
Yeah. All right. Well,
so there's that.
I need something good to come up.
There's a lot of year left. I think we'll be okay. I'm very curious to see where we're at the end of May. I think that will kind of maybe give us an indication What new things have you seen lately?
Well, myself, you, and apparently the world have all gone and seen Dune Part 2. Yeah, it's pretty awesome. It's pretty cool. It's
great.
It really is good. You can hear Jake and I talk about that in depth on a different platform. But yeah, great film.
We should probably plug that.
Yeah, we probably should, huh?
So if you've seen Dune Part 2 and you want to hear our spoilers, our thoughts filled with spoilers, we were invited on the Film versus Film podcast to talk all about Dune. And so I'm sure that's out by the time this comes out.
We probably should have checked with Martin first. Oh, well, Martin.
I'll figure it out.
Yeah, Martin probably won't care too much anyway. So, yeah, cool film. Really cool film. It's for someone who's like, I don't know, I'm always weird, Jake. I always say that I'm not the biggest sci-fi fan, but then I watch a shitload of sci-fi. And even when I'm like trying not to watch sci-fi, you come in and are like, hey, Dustin, let's watch a sci-fi movie. And I'm like, okay.
I know we're taking a break from sci-fi, but you should check this out. And you're like, that's great. I love it.
Right. So somehow I always end up in sci-fi. And now I have to really think, am I a big sci-fi movie nerd?
Yeah.
It might be a chance.
Yeah.
And then
I really appreciate how Dune has it used to be like the books were like the peak nerd level. Like if you liked Dune, you were an echelon level nerd. But it's really infected the whole general audience, which is pretty exciting.
Which it is cool. With it. And we talked about it with Martin, and I'll say it again here. I think my favorite thing with Dune Part 2 wasn't necessarily the movie itself, but the fact that it was bringing in these audiences to see it on the big screen, have a theatrical experience, which is what you should be doing. So that was fantastic. I love being in a packed theater, and it's so much fun.
I think it's a perfect release date for it too, because it has nothing competing
with it. It's crazy. So it was great. And then the only other new thing that I watched was one that as soon as it ended, I was, it was about half hour into it. I was like, how the hell have I never watched this before? Like genuinely disappointed in myself. It's not a new movie, but it was new to me. I watched a movie called Train to Busan. It's from South Korea. It is about a zombie outbreak that happens on a train in South Korea.
Oh, cool.
And father and his daughter, he has to they're trying to survive this train ride to Busan. Holy shit.
That sounds good.
It's so good, Jake. To the point where when I was watching it, I was like, I know that I can't put it on this list because I'm literally watching it for the first time right now.
Yeah.
But it might be one of the best zombie movies I have ever seen. It's
I'm going to watch that immediatay.
Freaking incredible. It's so good. It's so good.
That's fantastic.
So, yeah.
I don't think I've ever heard of it. It has a 7.6 on IMDb. That sounds awesome.
That's a fair rating. The zombie fanboy that I am would say, no, it should probably be higher, but that's a fair rating. So, great movie. Yeah. What about you, my good sir?
Obviously saw Dune Part 2. Loved that. Had a lot to say about it. But I don't even know what else to say about it. So just check out Martin's podcast because it's great. And then Film versus Film. And then I also watched, the only other thing I watched was Argylle.
Oh, you saw Argylle?
I saw Argylle, and it was fun. I enjoyed the first 2/3, at least the first half in particular. And then it started kind of losing me around the middle. And by the smoke in the hallway scene, I was I was draining in my attention, and care was draining out. And then by the ice skating scene, I was like, I'm out of this movie. And it was towards the end, but I was like, I don't know why I got lost. It just kind of lost me, and I'd stopped caring about it around that point.
Yeah.
All I have to say is the original transporter, did a better job of that 20 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, I was so curious to hear your thoughts on it. I know my daughter and I saw it when it first came out, and we were both like, it's entertaining, it's stupid. Like, just don't think during this movie. You just watch the movie for sheer entertainment, and you won't hate it. And I think I still stand by that.
Yeah.
But there were a couple moments, even my daughter said to me when it was over, that we were like, that was a weird choice. And we kept coming. It wasn't even the smoke in the hallway, although I did have a like, with the smoke scene.
Yeah.
But it dissipated because I reminded myself, like, just kind of go with it. But the ice skating, the oil, that was a hard one for me on many levels. I won't say any of right now because I obviously don't want to give spoilers for that one.
Sure.
But yeah, not shocked by your reaction at all.
Yeah. I fully. I think we're on the exact same page. It's a fine movie, a fun movie, but it could have been a lot better. I think that most of the reason it dropped down to a 5.8 on IMDb is because of like the last third of that movie. It just goes off the rails.
It kind of does. But some movies do that. So
yep, it's true. A couple weeks ago, we got contacted about a new movie coming out. Came out April 1st, actually. And we thought before we get into our top 10 foreign movies of all time, it would make sense to get into a new foreign movie that actually was looked pretty cool. And I was really excited and interested to check it out. So it's called Restore Point. From 2024 this year, and it's from the Czech Republic, which I don't know that I'd ever seen a movie from the Czech Republic before. It was very interesting. Watching the trailer, it looks like a very cool sci-fi movie set in the year 2041. There's this detective who basically all of humanity has gotten to the point where they are able to back up their lives and memories like on hard drives. And so if you get killed, they can bring you back, but you have to keep your backup fresh, like within every 48 hours. Otherwise it doesn't really work very well. And then there's a big detective mystery throughout the whole thing. And so that's, I guess, the gist. What did you think of Restore Point overall?
So I approached it completely blind. I didn't do research on it. I didn't watch the trailer. I just hit play and was like, let's see what we're in for. And I loved it. I loved every moment of this. I was like, this is such a fucking cool movie. I love that the sci-fi aspect of it was not like beat you over the head sci-fi. It was for being pretty high tech or whatever. I think they kept it well grounded and kept it believable and not like, I never felt disconnected to it because it definitely felt like, oh yeah, we'll probably, some moron's going to come up with this idea and try and enact it for real. I love the mystery. I love the detective work. I love how it unravels kind of what she ends up getting herself into. All of it. I was like, by the time it ended, I was just like, this was so exciting for me to watch. And it really brought back like just how much I love watching and being surprised by stuff.
Yeah.
Or like you go into it blind and you're just completely taken off guard. It was great. I know I'm already kind of a sucker for being a fan of like subtitles and they don't really bother me, but this was one where I was very much like, I never realized I was reading subtitles because the screen is constantly like, there's something cool, but you're not going to miss it because you're reading the subtitles. I think it's just, it was a cool movie.
That's a interesting point because I found myself, maybe I was just so engaged with the story that I didn't realize that they weren't speaking English until I like looked away and then someone would say something and I was like, I missed it. I don't know
Right.
what
Oh,
happened,
shit.
and I have to go back because it seems so natural, I don't know. It was a very interesting experience, and I agree with the sci-fi part for sure. I felt very much it reminded me a lot of like Children of Men,
Mhm.
where it's sci-fi, but all of the technology and stuff is very naturally integrated, and it doesn't feel like they're trying too hard to be sci-fi. And it was also really cool. Like there was a lot of really interesting, really cool things
It was
in
really
it.
cool.
And I know so little about the Czech Republic that I don't know. A lot of the architecture was really cool. And I'm like, is that just there? Or is that like put in for the movie? Is that
Right.
like, I couldn't even tell. It looked so sci-fi, but also realistic. It could have gone either way.
I had to laugh because you and I mentioned this when we talked about The Last Deal, when we got contacted to watch that and kind of give a quick review on that.
Mhm.
And the joke with that one was like, this is the most professional film that we've been asked to like preview and watch and give our take on it. And then I started Restore Point and was like, did we get like, this is full on, holy crap, this is very high profession right here.
Yeah, I have no idea. I didn't even look up what like the budget was, but it blew my mind in a lot of ways. It's incredible. And I love the main character, the detective. She was, I don't
She's
know,
fantastic.
her acting and her look and her presence, she just seemed and her story was really interesting. Everything about it, I loved it. It was great.
Yeah, fantastic movie. I think you can find it streaming now because it did release, right?
Yeah, it released, I think, straight to video April 1st.
Yeah, I think it's on Prime. Highly, highly recommend this one. This was so cool to watch, especially if you like mystery, if you like sci-fi, if you like kind of detective noir stuff, because there's a lot in this movie. It's well paced, it keeps you intrigued, and what I really, really appreciated was all the like discoveries were not presented as a like, oh my god, or like a
big twist
kind of thing. It was just, this is where the facts brought you. This is the
procedural.
next. I really, really liked how they handled all that. Very cool movie.
Yeah, I'd say it's a definite recommend. Check it out and let us know what you think, because it was really cool.
It was really cool. I really did like it.
It was so fucking cool. I was like, so cool. Amazing. I knew you would like it. Like I watched it, I was like, there's no way he's not like
right. I was watching it, was like, oh, this is my kind of, I am right in this from the get-go.
Yeah, 100%. Okay. Are you ready for this episode?
Dude, I'm so ready for this. Not even for my list. I'm just so curious to hear how many lines you blur or just flat out ignore.
Okay. So we're doing our top 10 foreign films. And I wanted to ask you off the top, where was your confidence level going into making this list? Because I'm not going to lie, I was intimidated by it. I have not watched as many foreign movies as I probably should have. But what did you think? Would you like, oh yeah, there's so many, it's easy to pick from, or how did you approach it?
Yeah. I had a really good set of like, I know this group of like 15 to 20 are, the 10 is in this, are in these. I was confident with mine. The only like non-confident stuff was where I was going to rank a few of them. But I went in pretty like, all right, this one won't be that intimidating. I also went into it laughing because I knew that you were going to be like, Dustin's an asshole. I don't watch international films. I don't know how I'm going to make 10.
I do, but part of my intimidation is that I put a rule on myself that we did our top 10 martial arts episode, and so I wasn't going to do any martial arts or kung fu movies on it originally.
Oh, so you just added another layer of difficulty to you.
Yeah, so I tried really hard to not include any martial arts movies. I don't have any Jackie Chan movies. I don't have any Bruce Lee movies, and so that eliminated a giant chunk of the stuff that I normally watch.
Yeah.
And then almost all of them. And then just the other day, I was trying to figure out, like, because you said let's do foreign movies, and I said, okay, great, that sounds good. And then I was thinking about it more over the last week or so, and then I had my preliminary list, and then just the other day, I was trying to figure out what you really meant by that. And so I texted you,
Yep.
and I think I assumed you meant foreign language movies, but then in my mind, I was like, well, if we're doing foreign movies, it really is an opportunity to highlight non-Hollywood, non-Western or North American movies. And so there are a lot of great movies that get made in other countries on smaller budgets and with non actors that we don't know. They're not like international stars. Right. They're just like locally famous or even unknown actors, and they're great movies. And so I think that's a good thing to highlight and appreciate for sure. And because like all of the international submissions at like award shows are so small, like that's such a narrow pool and in the broad scope of all of the movies that get made in the rest of the world. So I don't think we do a good job of supporting or appreciating international movies here. Part of that is distribution. Yeah. I was talking to Christy, my wife, and I was like, I don't know that I've seen an international movie in the movie theater before. Like, I think I've only ever watched them on like DVD or streaming or whatever, and they just don't get
theatrical runs. Yeah,
theatrical.
I think. I mean, when I went and saw Godzilla -1, I kind of had that same thought of like, and this sounds bad, but it's distribution. But I really had to think like, is this the first like foreign film that I've watched on the big screen? I mean, I've seen other movies that are foreign language based, like Apocalyptico, or not to call Mel Gibson out right out the gate, but and Passion, like those are foreign language films. I did not include those on this list because they were still big budget Hollywood films. They're American made. They were just, so it was very strange to me. I had that same thought of just like, we don't get to see these movies. It's pure word of mouth or on a whim, or the award shows you find, you'll hear about a couple that are getting nominated and your curiosity might pique. But yeah, I'm with you. You don't get distribution here for this stuff, which is kind of sad.
It is sad. I would like to see more of that for sure. And I think, so I went with I listened to what you said that it should be, and then I did bend the rules some of what I actually wanted to do. And I will say, I think I did a good job. All 10 of my movies are actually from different countries. And so I don't have I don't have two movies from the same country. And so that, I think, is my highlight. And so that is good. I went with that kind of regardless of language, but they are all non-Hollywood, non-American based movies. The other thing I wanted to check on you before we started, where do you fall on subtitles versus dubbing?
I kind of fall in the same vein that I do when it comes to like director's cuts.
Okay.
I don't watch dubbed. If the movie is made in a certain language, that's a primary language, the primary, how the director or writer, how they envisioned it, then that's how I'm going to watch it. When I was a little kid, you watch dubbed films all the time, and that was like the joke, right? You'd watch a Bruce Lee movie or a Sonny Chiba movie or Jackie Chan, and it's always dubbed, and it's the joke.
It's part of the fun.
Yeah, but then I got older and was like, then I'd watch these movies in their original language, and it's like, oh, the dialogue is different. Because the dubbing changes a little bit of the script, which is kind of sad. When I realized that actually really bummed me out. Still bums me out. Why are you changing the script? Like, literally, the subtitles are there. You just got to read them. But it also comes down to like translation and stuff. But no, if a movie is meant to be in a foreign language, I'm gonna watch it in that language. I don't mind subtitles. If you asked me 16-ish years ago, I'd tell you like I hate subtitles. I can't stand it. But when I became a dad, you know, you're trying to rock the baby to sleep, I'd have a movie playing. The volume is muted essentially, and it's subtitles.
Yeah.
Now I'm used to it. Now, like, I can have the volume all the way up. Subtitles are going to be on because it's just like now it's just in my nature to turn subtitles on. So I am not bothered by subtitles at all.
Okay. I struggle with subtitles because I don't know. There's something in my monkey brain or whatever where even if the movie's in English and the volume is loud and I can hear it and I can understand it and everything, if subtitles are on, I'm looking at the subtitles and I'm not looking at the actual images on the screen. And I feel like I'm missing stuff because I'm always looking back and forth and stuff. And so I don't love it, but I definitely agree with you on how it's meant to be. And the dubbing generally sucks because the voices don't match the actor or the voice acting performance is nowhere near their level of like inflection and actual emotion and stuff. And so there's a lot to be said for that. But if there's a good dubbing, I will stoop to do it. Like this is a sidetrack, but I was watching Love is Blind season 6.
Of course you were.
Knows, I'm a fan of that. And we ran out of episodes, and I learned that there is a Love is Blind Sweden and a Love is Blind Brazil. And so I was like, fuck yeah, I'm going to watch those. But they only had subtitles, and it's the kind of show that I don't want to do work to watch. Like, I want to just put it on. And so I was like, I want the dub version, but then the dub version, all of the voices sucked, and they didn't fit at all. And I was like, I can't handle this. And so I didn't watch it and chose not to. So I guess that's a message out there. If you're going to do dubbing, at least get good actors
right.
for it.
I will say that if I'm going to watch a movie that is in foreign language and has subtitles, I have to automatically go into it knowing like you literally can't do anything at all. Like
you can't look away, you can't go get a drink without pausing it, right. You can't look at your phone, which isn't bad.
It's not bad. Like I'm okay with not looking at the phone, but I am one, especially with movies that I've seen numerous times, that was challenging with this list. Because I've seen all of these numerous times. I know these movies well, but I still can't leave the room to like make some coffee or start cooking or doing laundry.
I normally will after I've seen them or whatever, I'll throw another one on while I'm doing my note taking and stuff. And now I'm like taking a note, and then nobody's talking, and then somebody talks, and I'm like oh shit. Yeah, it was a different experience.
Different experience for sure. But I'm glad we did this one because there was a couple on here that I've like. I knew a long time ago. Eventually, we would do a foreign films episode. It's kind of part of movie watching. So I have had a few that I have just kind of had sitting that should have been on so many other lists, but I've been like, nope, I'm saving you so that I at least still have my 10 and don't lose you, and then find myself like, shit, how am I going to fill up the list?
Yeah, I'm glad we finally get around to highlighting those ones.
Yeah.
All right, you want to get into it?
Let's do it.
Oh, well. So our top 10 foreign films of all time. Do you want to go first?
Sure.
Okay.
I'll start my list off by saying there's a couple on mine that people are going to laugh at because they do have American remakes to them. And the American remakes like hold no candle to the original.
Yeah.
So this is the originals. We're just putting that out there.
That sounds
good.
This
is the good stuff.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing that happens, and more often than not, that is the case. There are a couple where the American version is as good or better, but not often.
Not often. And my number 10 is a great example of that. I saw this movie a long time ago when it first kind of was available to see here in the States. I think I ended up watching it on like TiVo when that was a thing, because they would also stream movies on TiVo, and I think I just watched it on a whim.
Mm-hmm.
It's such an interesting story, and the way that it plays out is just unique to how we kind of are used to horror and ghost stories. This one was very, it's not scary. It kind of sticks with you, but it's more just intriguing. And I guess that's where a little bit of fear, I could see people being very afraid of certain aspects in it, but it's just an interesting story. It is about this young woman who is blind, and then she gets cornea like replacements put in. And as soon as she's able to see again, she starts seeing figures in the hospital. They're these tall, dark, kind of gray and black figures. And she starts seeing ghosts, essentially. And it has a mystery aspect where she's trying to figure out why she's all of a sudden seeing these spirits and these other figures around. And the more it unfolds with her character specifically, because she's also trying to adapt to being able to see for the first time, and make light of that. Very cool movie. It's shot very interestingly, super low budget, which is also one thing about, I think, every movie on my list, very low budgets, and it adds depth to the movie. And it made me very excited rewatching these again, just being like, oh man, I'm more into this right now. And not to sound, like a douche or whatever, but I was like, we need more like this style. This is so good. But my number 10 is a movie from China called The Eye. Okay. And I'm not going to try to pronounce like anyone's real names because horrible at it. But it's such a cool movie. If you have a chance to be able to find this original, the American remake with Jessica Alba completely destroys the heart of this movie, and they overdo all the subtleties in the original, and that is what the American remakes tend to do, is they think, oh, we can't be subtle on this. Oh, there's like no jump scares in this movie. Well, we have to add jump scares. The Eye has like,
it's missing.
Yeah, and The Eye has no jump scares in it. It's just you are along for this slow burning ride, and I love it. Absolutely love this movie.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I foreign horror is fantastic in particular, I think, because we don't know all of the movie making tropes that different cultures do and stuff. And so I think there's an element of the unknown, or you don't know what to expect going into it, or how crazy it's going to be, or what's going to happen next, more so in foreign movies than you have with American made horror movies. And so I think foreign horror in particular is great for sure.
Yeah, very, very unpredictable for the most part, because we don't know their tropes. We just know, like, there's almost, especially with like Japanese horror, it's kind of known for being able to be in that style that just elevates constantly and is going to put stuff on the screen that's going to make you kind of squirm a little bit. And I think it's just because we can't predict it. So it adds to the entertainment. Love it.
Yeah, it definitely does. And I love that you said that it kind of makes you more into this movie, because I have a problem where I can't often separate the actor from the character, and more often than not. And so it's refreshing to see a foreign movie, and I have never seen this actor before in my life. And so to me, they are 100% that character. And that's just such a great experience for all of these stories.
Yeah.
My number 10 is pretty similar in the sense that it is also a horror movie, an action horror movie though, so a little different. And it comes to us from the country of Spain.
All right.
I'm a pretty big fan of this franchise in general, and it is a franchise that they did do an American remake of. And the American remake, at least the first one, is pretty good, but then the sequels kind of go their separate ways as far as the foreign one versus the American one pretty quickly. They do their own kind of things. And so my number 10 is actually the third movie in the franchise. It's part of the Rec franchise from Spain. And I like Rec and Rec 2 a lot, but Rec 3, I feel like it really just jumps up a level. The quality improves significantly. It does new and different things. And so if anybody knows Rec, or if you've seen Quarantine, Quarantine is the American version, and it's basically the exact same movie as the original Rec, which is a found footage style about this woman who goes to a fire station and then an apartment building, and it gets infected by zombies, and it's all through her camera crew's lens. So it's all very found footage, all very shaky. Rec 3, though, it starts out that way. It's about this. It starts out like you popped in the DVD from a couple's wedding, that they had just had a wedding, and there's a little slideshow and stuff, and a menu and all of that good stuff. And then you kind of jump into their actual like wedding ceremony and reception and stuff. But then, so it takes place at the exact same time as the original Rec, and there's a zombie outbreak in the country in Spain that happens, and one of the guests kind of go crazy and everything kind of starts falling apart. And so it's not a super serious pick. It is a little bit more comedic because it's actiony and also has a good bit of humor in it, but it's a really fun movie, I think. And I think it in part has to have inspired Ready or Not, because the bride is very kind of a central figure, and she has a great scene kind of in that same sort of underground corridor with she cuts off the bottom of her wedding dress, and except she has a chainsaw in Rec 3, so it's a little bit cooler than Ready or Not, I'm gonna say.
Grace doesn't have a chainsaw, dude.
Yeah. But so it jumps up the ante in the actual quality. The picture and everything looks much better than the first two movies, and it also drops the found footage style pretty quickly. Like the first 30 minutes is all found footage, but then it kind of just transitions out, and it brings it back in occasionally for like interesting things like using night vision or different things that happen. But it's mostly shot like a normal movie after that, and I think that's interesting to do, and kind of is an improvement overall for the story and for most audiences. And it's a fun movie. It has tons of great gore and kills, everything you want from a zombie movie. I think it's really, really solid, and like I mentioned, the comedy is there enough to make it just a fun time. The wedding's at this big like palace piazza thing, and there are a couple of guys that put on suits of armor to fight the zombies. It's just a fun time. Great visuals, great kills, great gore effects, great all around. So I'm a fan.
That's fantastic.
Of Rec 3 Genesis. Yeah,
that's fantastic. Way to go with a third part in a franchise for your number 10. I think you and I have now done where we've picked like a sequel on a list that you wouldn't typically think of for a sequel based one. If I remember right, I did The Last Crusade on our very first episode of all like ever that we ever recorded. So,
favorite action adventure. Yeah.
Go us. That's fantastic. All right. Well, my number 9 is going to follow the coattails of your comedy side of things. And this one might be the first one that I'm going to get like, whoa. You said this wasn't big Hollywood American style, but you've got one of the biggest American comedy stars in this. His production company made this. It's co-written with his writing partner. But the movie takes place in Mexico, and the whole movie is in Spanish. Yeah. So this one is kind of a weird cheat, but not really, in my opinion. They even say at the very start of the movie, this is a Spanish film in Mexico. The movie is in Spanish. Get over it. But this movie is so stupid, and it leans into the stupidity so far that it's what makes the movie work for me. And there's like drug dealers, you've got a war with a cartel, you've got brothers feuding, it's all on this ranch, you have a father who loves one son more than the other son, and It's amazingly ridiculous. So my number 9 is Casa de Mi Padre with Will
Yeah.
Ferrell.
Yeah.
This movie is fantastic. I will never not laugh at this movie. It is hilarious from the get-go. It's it's such an absurd idea to have Will Ferrell play this Mexican rancher who is kind of like, he's not loved as much as his dad, but his drug dealing brother is adored by his dad. His dad thinks of the younger brother doing no wrong, but he's a drug dealer who's fighting the local cartel. He's in a drug war with the cartel. And then Will Ferrell's character gets kind of mixed up in having an affair with his brother's fiance, who's kind of an arranged marriage. And the movie features what can only be described as the most ridiculous, awkward sex scene ever put on screen. I'm not going to tell you what it is because I think people need to just see it for themselves. But I will tell you this, Jake. Watching this movie after our nudity episode, after all of the complaining and anti-poor things that you and I have really taken a hard stance on, the sex scene and nudity in this movie was kind of refreshing because it was like, it doesn't take it serious. It doesn't even try to actually do the normal Hollywood thing when it comes to sex and nudity. In fact, it completely makes fun of the whole idea. And it is the most brilliant part of the film, but this movie is hilarious. It's so freaking funny. Nick Offerman shows up at one point, well, for a couple scenes. It's just, I can't get over this movie. I feel like no one saw it because it's in Spanish, but more people should see it because it's hilarious.
Yeah. I remember seeing it, but it's been forever since I've seen it. So I was rewatching the trailer as you were talking, and I need to go back to this because it does look like a fun time. And I think there's no more perfect casting than Nick Offerman as a DEA agent.
Right.
That sounds great.
I mean, the movie's so dumb. It's so dumb, but it's supposed to be. And thank God we get stupid movies like this because it's good for us.
The tagline is the funniest movie you'll ever read.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it definitely leans heavy on the subtitle as a shtick thing, sounds like.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, my number 9 is pretty different from that. Kind of completely different, except it does have to do with drug dealing, cartels, more like mafia and organized crime. So if you like mafia movies and you like kind of just the organized crime element in crime movies, but this movie is possibly much more pure and grounded and authentic and less romanticized, I think, than like the big ones, Goodfellas and Godfather and all that stuff. My number 9 is a movie called Gomorrah from Italy from 2008. And it's an Italian movie. It's actually based on a book that was written by a journalist who studied and put out this book about this town in Naples and how the mafia kind of has a chokehold on the people there, has completely infiltrated every level, and it was such a successful book that when it came out, he got so many death threats and is kind of in permanent police custody now. So it seems like a big deal, seems very authentic, and when you're watching the movie, it feels like you're watching a documentary. Like it feels like these are actual things that are happening to actual people, which is fun and interesting. I find it very intriguing, and it follows these like different groups. So it's kind of disconnected story. It is a little bit tricky to keep up with, I think, but it's worth it if you're interested in the subject matter in particular, because it kind of follows different people who have different interactions or different levels of contact with the mob in this town in Italy, and it's from like young kids who are exposed to it and seeing these guys making a bunch of money and they want to get involved. They're kind of like the young Henry Hills at the beginning of Goodfellas. Like they want to get involved and they want to become those made men kind of things. And then there's teenagers that are like a bunch of headstrong or cocksure idiots who are like, we can be Tony Montana. We can go and take over this guy who's running all of this stuff in this area. He's an idiot, and we're so much better and stronger than him. We can totally just take it over from him. And so they try, and things go sideways often. And so there's a bunch of different people and a bunch of different things that happen. It's violent. It's interesting and brutal. And I think it just makes you feel kind of like you were there. And I think that's really, really interesting. I like those kinds of brutal and less traditional movies. I think it's intriguing. So Gomorrah is that, if you're into that sort of thing and find kind of the homeland of the mafia, like actual Italy, Italian cinema, is very interesting.
I feel like I remember seeing the cover of Gomorrah. I gotta look it up.
Yeah, I think it is a little bit bigger. I know it was at Cannes Film Festival, I think, and it might have been a foreign language submission at the Oscars in like 2009, I think. So it got a little bit more press, I think, than most foreign movies do.
Yeah. Gomorrah. Oh, maybe I didn't see that cover. It sounds so familiar, though. I feel like either I've heard you talk about it or I don't think I've seen it. Oh, I'll have to check it out. Huh.
Yeah.
Just to find out, like, why does it sound so familiar to me? That's excellent. I love that you found a gangster movie from Italy to have on your list. I think that's fantastic. Yeah. That makes me happy.
It's really cool.
All right. Well, my number 8 is the most recent one. From a few years ago. I think it was 2019, so not that long ago, actually. This was one that I remember watching the previews for it and just kind of having that kind of gut feeling like, oh, I'm going to be a fan of this. I'm a huge fan of this director, so that probably lent more into like, you're going to enjoy this movie. And the first time I watched it, I did really enjoy it. But I also was kind of like, yeah, it was cool. It's got some interesting things to it. But as I've watched it again over the last handful of years, it's such an interesting story. And the escalation in it is done so well because the first time you watch it, it seems like it comes out of nowhere. But the more you watch it, you realize like, no, it's basically like a countdown. Every other scene, every little thing that happens in this movie is just building and building and building. And it's subtle and they mask it with like some quirky moments and they make you kind of chuckle at some of the situations. But then the more you watch it, the more you realize like nothing is actually all that funny of what's going on. No wonder this escalates to where it ends up. But so my number 8 is from 2019. It's Parasite by Bong Joon-ho, who made one of my all-time favorite monster movies ever with The Host, which I will love that movie forever. It's so good. This one, he shares some of the same cast in this one. It's just, Parasite is such a unique story about this poor family who just exploit and take advantage of opportunities that keep coming, and they kind of exploit the arrogance of the rich, which is what kind of makes you laugh at a handful of things. But the more you watch it, the more you realize like the arrogance of the rich is pretty, like, you guys are really like, not all rich people are terrible and arrogant. Don't take that. But it was very like, there's a lot. And then you start like, you don't chuckle as much at how they're exploiting the situations or exploiting the opportunities because it's manipulative and it's actually kind of like, oh, this is a whole different level of deceit. Like, whoo. And it does turn dark, and it does escalate to some pretty intense moments for the final act of the film. But it's such a unique movie, just how it shows you these other parts of Korea. You know, you get the gated community versus the lower side of it, where like there's this family's home is literally kind of on lower level than the street, and that's where the sewage water all goes, so everything flows into their house. And it's Bong Joon-ho, I think I said his name, he has such a unique eye in how he's going to shoot the films and tell these stories, and the drama that he builds up and kind of shows and just lets you process it. He has, I think he's underrated as a director. I really do. So number 8, I debated having it on my list because I was like, it's so recent. I'm sure someone's going to be like, but every time I watch it, I'm like, this is genuinely a fantastic movie. So I couldn't not have it on this list.
Yeah, I had the same thought because I was like, 2019 was like last year, and so I can't have those movies on my list. And I was like, no, it's 5 years ago. I think it's allowed, and also they're great. I think I have 2 2019 movies on my list. And Parasite is one of them. It's an overlap for me.
Oh, nice!
Because it's the one that I had the highest confidence might be for you.
Okay.
Because I think you've talked about it before, and I also think it's one of those movies that did get a little bit more notoriety than most foreign movies. Well, it being the first foreign movie ever to win the Best Picture at the Academy Awards will do that. So it got some notice and well worth it. It's the first movie in a long time that I don't think anybody really complained when it won the Best Picture. Right. Okay. Even though a lot of good stuff came out in 2019, okay, we'll allow that.
Right,
one. That's a really good movie. My number 8 is maybe the biggest cheat. Because
finally we get into some Jake cheats.
It is foreign. And I remember it feeling very foreign when I first saw it. But it is all in English. And so not only is it in English, it's from England and the land of Englishness. And so my number 8 is 28 Days Later.
You know what? At least it counts. It's like low budget English film before Cillian Murphy became
that
so
was
huge.
That was my total thing, because I think it may have been the first movie that I remember. It came out, or I saw it around the time when I actually started caring about movies and watching movies. I think I had my own Blockbuster mail DVD subscription, and so they were mailing me movies, and I was adding a bunch of shit. And 28 Days Later is a movie that it feels like everybody should know it by now. But then also sometimes it feels like it's still waiting to be discovered. Like people just still don't appreciate how great it is. And I just remember seeing it back then and it feeling very different than all of the big Hollywood movies I had seen to that point. And I hadn't seen a lot of foreign stuff. And so it being a kind of low budget, independent Danny Boyle movie, one of his earlier movies, after Trainspotting, but still pretty darn early. And Alex Garland's next movie after The Beach, after he kind of got big. And like you said, Cillian Murphy's first major role, and the one that kind of led to Batman Begins 3 years later. Like this is I think his breakout for sure. And it just feels so small and different and foreign. And then it also kind of adds in the element of being different than any other zombie movie or outbreak movie that you have ever seen before, because it was very fast, very kinetic, very chaotic, and scary, kind of more scary than zombies had been in a very long time.
Yeah.
We had kind of done zombies for a while, and we're like, yeah, we know how to beat them now. They're kind of dull in movies. And then Alex Garland came along and he's like, well, what if you get infected and you get any sort of blood or saliva or anything, even in your eyes or something, and that'll fuck you up and you just go crazy. and this movie shows a lot of that, and it shows it really well. But also, I really love the human element and the human story of Cillian Murphy's character waking up and trying to figure stuff out. It was kind of before Walking Dead was even a thing. This was like the original of that trope. And then the group that he kind of forms on accident and how they interact and the things they go through. It's a great character-driven movie as well. And so I've always loved 28 Days Later. I will continue to love it. And it's boring as fuck, so I'm putting it on my list.
It totally counts because it is one of those movies where all of it, all the details in it definitely feel like, yeah, American audiences aren't going to understand this, even down to like the sodas that they find and drink, because it's not Coca-Cola, it's not Pepsi, it's nothing like what we have here, which it is pretty like it does force you on that, you know, yeah, they're all driving on the other side of the road. And for once, it wasn't like Jason Bourne having car chases. Nothing against the Bourne franchise. I love that franchise, but it wasn't Americanized and it wasn't polished. It felt, not only did it feel like an independent film and a foreign film, but it felt so, I mean, it is gritty. I mean, the shots are not clean. It looks like the lens was, you know, wiped over with the sweat from all the actors on some scenes. I remember when 28 Days Later came out, man, and just hearing the buzz about it, because everyone was coming out and saying like, no, this movie's actually like, this movie kind of messes people up. It's brutal and it's zombies are scary again, you know, because zombies went from being terrifying and gross to just gross to kind of comedic to like, oh, now they're in an action franchise with Resident Evil, so that's cool. But then 28 Days Later was like, what if we kind of go back to zombies, but now it's like rage, infection, and to this day, people still debate are they real zombies or not. So great choice. I completely bravo, sir. I like that.
Okay.
Yes.
Good. I've been verified.
Yeah. All right. My number 7 is not in English. It is the first movie from Japan. Unlike you, Jake, I do have country overlaps. Nothing in America, but I do have country overlaps. I just couldn't get away from that.
That's okay. You can't be as cool as me.
Apparently. Well, my number 7 is another original horror film that got the American remake treatment. And I don't really have a lot against the American remake. In fact, I saw the remake before I saw the original. And I thought, well, this is like, it was entertaining. It was cool. I remember being in the theater. It scared the shit out of everyone in the theater. And then after it was out for a while, and I think it was after the remake came out on DVD, people started talking about the original and saying like, oh, you should watch the original. Like, the remake tries to be a shot-for-shot remake, and it does. And a lot of people were saying this, and then another movie very in the same vein, which also had the American remake, people were saying like, it's the same movie, so you can see either one, it doesn't matter. But this one, the original is different. Yes, the American remake tries to do a shot for shot, but they change up a lot of the actual story. They kind of sacrifice the guts part, not gory guts, but like character stories. They sacrifice how the mystery of this lore is unraveled for jump scares. And the original is just, every time I watch it, I'm just like, dude, this movie's so fucking good. It's so well written. It's kind of a shame that it'll permanently always be overshadowed by the American remake. But I'm here to give it honor. My number 7 is Ju-on, The Grudge from Japan. This original, dude, is... Everyone automatically will hear the sound. Everyone knows the sound from the American remake. And the sound is in the original, but like only a third of the amount that the remake does it. The original is based just on atmosphere, and here's this mystery. The story's not told linear. It does a lot of back and forth like the remake tries to do, but the original just does it flawlessly and very like there's hardly any hard cuts. It's very just, you are creeped out from the get-go in this movie. And by the time it ends, you're just left with this like amazement that this lore, you and I have talked about this before. We love lore in stories. And I especially love it when like Japan and China, these other countries are able to take like their actual lore and turn it into something like this, turn it into some art that's gonna mess people up. And this original just, it does it so flawlessly. I love Ju-on so much.
I definitely love it too. It's one that I remember watching, and I heard all the same things, that it was kind of like The Grudge and The Ring and all of those kinds of movies that had an American remake. People are talking about how is it compared to the original, is which one is creepier and all that stuff. And I think the original Grudge is fantastic, and nothing wrong with that at all.
The kid is creepier, the meowing is creepy, like everything in that original is just, it's so much better. It just is. No offense, Sarah Michelle Gellar. Like, you're fine in it, but y'all fucked up that story. Stick with the original, folks. Stick with the original.
So strong. My number 7 is the other movie that's from 2019 that's not Parasite. It comes to us from China, and it's actually I think probably the best, maybe not the best, but certainly one of the top tiers neo-noir movies of the last 5 years, maybe last 10 years. It's phenomenal. The style in this movie is so strong, so stylish, so sleek, and so kind of like a couple of the other ones I've talked about before, where it's pretty gritty and pretty, but in a different kind of like crime thrillery way. So my number 7 is called The Wild Goose Lake, and I've not seen any other movies. It's the latest movie from this writer-director, which I am not going to try to pronounce his name. It's his most recent movie, but it's so great that I want to check out all of his other stuff. And like I said, the style of this movie is top-notch, visually incredible. It's not a martial arts movie, I wouldn't say. It's definitely a neo-noir thriller, basically, but there are some great fights in it, and gritty violence in general. It gets pretty bloody, gets pretty gory, but it's all like gunfights and knife fights and things that happen. It's about this guy. He's a criminal, part of a criminal element, and they basically just go around doing crimes, mostly stealing mopeds from streets in China, and they have this like meetup where they try to figure out who gets what territory, and things kind of go sideways as he's trying to steal some bikes, and he ends up killing a cop, and didn't know it was a cop at the time, but ends up killing him. So now all of the police are basically hunting him, and he tries to hide out at the Wild Goose Lake, which is kind of like, I get the impression it's kind of like China's version of the Ozarks. Okay. And if you've ever seen like the Ozark show with Jason Bateman on Netflix, it's kind of like that, but much more. It's like that mixed with Drive. Like if you get the style of Drive and the color and the violence and stuff from Drive, it's like that, but in China, and it's awesome. So if that sounds cool, watch with the Wild Goose Lake. And I know you in particular, if you haven't seen it, will love this movie.
I just watched the trailer while you were describing it, and that looks right up my alley. Like, you were talking, I'm watching the trailer, and all I kept thinking was, how have I not watched this before? I need to watch this. I need to remedy that. All right. Yep.
You do. It's great.
We're going to be watching that this week, I think. That looks fantastic. Holy crap.
Yeah.
All right. Well, my number 6 is I guess, my quote unquote second cheat, but not really a cheat in my opinion. Kind of in the vein of your 28 Days Later, but not serious. Kind of gory on some parts, but not serious in any aspect at all. You have talked about this movie once before on our show, on your favorite parody list, if I remember right. I think so. Okay. Or we brought it up as an honorable mention. It's one of those.
Mm-hmm.
But my number 6 comes from New Zealand. And I knew as soon as I said New Zealand, you were going to be like, I know it.
It might as well be foreign language because you need subtitles to watch this movie.
For some of the dialogue, their accents are definitely thick. But you and I have been fans of Jermaine Clement for a long time. You introduced me to that style with Fly of the Conchord, and it's just, his dry humor is perfect. And I think this is Taika Waititi's, this is his lane. This is his best style of work. I think it's his best movie. It's just, everything about What We Do in the Shadows is fantastic. There is not one thing in this movie that is not funny or perfectly parodied and written. First time I saw this was like, holy crap, I'm watching MTV Cribs with vampires in New Zealand, and they have zero social skills, even with each other. Yeah. And then, like, it doesn't take long, but I love it when movies lean into jokes and lean into just goofy moments. It's still my favorite part. Well, my second favorite part in the movie is their like house meeting at the dining room table, their argument over who needs to still do the dishes. And then they start hissing at each other, which, if there is one trope in every vampire movie that drives me nuts, because it's like, this is so dumb, it's so annoying, it's hissing. Vampires don't need to always hiss. When they hiss in this movie, it's the joke, and it's perfect. Yeah. It's the only movie that does it well. And then they put the cherry on top with them floating in the air, and you can tell that the awkward wire work, they just left it in. They just literally took the wires out, but they left the like, floating, and it's, I never not laugh at that scene. It's so good. But this movie is, I wanted it to be on my parody list so bad, but I knew like, this is a good one for this list because it'll be a good cheat, because it is all in English. But dude, there's not one funny line, or like not funny line in this whole movie. It is hilarious. It is gold. The show is fantastic. Everyone talks about the show, and I'm always like, yes, the show was funny. Have you watched the movie? And every time, no joke, every time they go, oh, there's a movie? Like, God damn it. Like, yes, there's a movie. It's in the opening credits of the show. Like, go back, watch the movie. It is, it's so much better than the show. No offense, show, but the movie is, it's perfect.
It's much more like enclosed and one pure, clear thing, and it's done so well.
It's done so well. It's, God damn it.
When you were describing, when you said New Zealand, the first movie I thought of was Black Sheep. And then you said there's sometimes violence, but also sometimes funny. And then I was like, well, yeah, obviously you're talking about Black Sheep. And that's totally the movie. I was like, oh yeah, their accents are crazy. That movie.
Black Sheep was already on one of, last year's list. That was on our B movies list. So I wasn't going to repeat that one.
True.
Yeah. But Black Sheep is
Okay,
fantastic too. Go watch that. But be afraid of the were sheep. They're bad.
Yes. My number 6 is Nordic, comes from Norwegian film. And you talked about the importance of lore from other countries, and I really love the Scandinavian mythology from this movie. And I do think it was probably on my top 10 monster list.
It was.
That was so long ago that I was like, we'll just do it. And I needed another country, and Norway fit. So my number 6 is Troll Hunter from 2010. It is the perfect blend of serious, and they play it straight, and it kind of gets scary at times, but also it is kind of funny and mockumentary style. So it's about these students who are trying to go and investigate some bear attacks in Norway, and they learn through the course of the movie that it's not bear attacks, that they're actual trolls out in the woods. They're gigantic. They're distinctive styles. I love the style of the actual troll monsters and how much you see of them, and they're all very unique and animated in such an interesting way. And it's such a great fun movie overall. So it is a little scary, but it is mostly just a fun, great time the whole way through. And written, directed by Andre Ovredal, who recently did The Last Voyage of the Demeter, with the vampire movie that I think got overshadowed by the Nicolas Cage one.
Yeah.
But then I think maybe his best work was The Autopsy of Jane Doe. And so he does a great job of mixing the horror with the actual there's like some of these, we don't know this, but people in Norway watching it know that some of the actors are like actually big comedians over there. And so it does a great job of kind of blending the serious and the not serious, I think. And it's fantastic. I've loved it forever. When I first saw it, and I remember being like, this is very different, because I don't think I've ever seen a movie from Norway, and I've never heard their language and read subtitles and all that stuff. And then when you see the trolls, you're like, this movie is amazing and one of the best things I've ever seen. And I will always appreciate it.
Yeah, I left it off because it was on the monsters list. It's the one that I've been like going back and forth of like, just duplicate. If you're going to duplicate one, that's the one. I was like, no. So I highlighted in my notes, like, Troll Hunter's going to get talked about no matter what. It's going to be like the honorable mention. I'm so glad it was on your list. Troll Hunter is incredible. It's so fucking good. Everything you said is correct. I think what really drew me to that movie was it completely dives into the country's lore of trolls. Like, you get to actually see how the country views trolls and kind of talks about that mythology and stuff. And I think that's so cool that we get a movie like this where it's going to kind of show you like all the different types and all this and talk about them. And the comedic side of it all, the ridiculousness, in the cave, which is like equally intense. And then they like decide to 180 it and turn it into something funny. It's oh my god, Troll Hunter. There is not one bad thing about that movie. It is.
Yeah. And I think it's so accessible, even to, I don't know a ton about trolls, but I mean I know basic things like the UV light makes them stone. And so it's fun when they run into the Troll Hunter, the guy that is actually out there, and he has got like all the gear, and he's got like a truck with giant UV like spotlights and stuff. But I think that it still is accessible because it's very much like if you made an American movie about Sasquatch hunters.
Yeah.
That there's these things out in the woods that everybody's talked about, and it feels a little bit more mythological from Norway, because it's kind of more like, these are the stories that our grandparents told us when we were going to sleep and all that. And the
fact that
like,
it's
as
Norway.
A warning. Yeah, it's more of like as a warning, like, don't eat your vegetables or the trolls are going to come and get you. And or there's a goat on the bridge and the troll lives underneath, and all of the different weird things from that country. But I think it's very accessible, and you totally get it, even as an American watching it. It's so fun.
It's still one of the most exciting movies I've seen in the last 20 years. It's just so much fun. Oh man, I'm so glad that we got to talk about it. Yes.
Yeah, good old Troll Hunter.
All right. My number 5 is not funny at all. In fact, there's not one moment that makes you feel like, oh, ha, 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 how wonderful. The whole movie, you're just kind of like, oh my God. Well, okay, that's not entire. It's a 2-hour film, and for about an hour and 40 minutes, you just sit there with like, you are sad for the majority of this film. And then they're like,
Fun.
oh, and then on top of it, we're going to creep you out with some like children ghosts. Here we go.
Okay.
I think I've talked about this movie once, but a long time ago on the show. But it's one that I've always wished more people saw and gave a shot, because it's another great. It's not scary. It has some creepy moments in it, but the drama of it and the acting in it is top notch. So my number 5 is a movie from Spain called The Orphanage.
Oh, yeah.
And it's about this woman and her husband who, them and their young boy, who's like, I think Simon is 6. They move into the old orphanage that the mom was raised in. And then she was adopted and left. And then her friends in the orphanage, they all died over time and stuff. And her and her husband decide to reopen it so that they can adopt and take care of like 5 or 6 special needs children in particular, because that's what the orphanage was originally. And she was like the only non-special needs child when she was growing up there.
Yeah.
And her son, Simon, makes friends with a little ghost boy named Thomas. And that's when the weird and kind of creepy stuff starts happening. But then the story takes a new escalation. There's a tragedy that happens. And then just watching the mom try and process and she just becomes so engrossed with solving a mystery and trying to cope with tragedy and trying to cope with so much. As the movie progresses, the drama of it intensifies, and it's just, The Orphanage is one of those movies where it's beautiful and it's so tragic, but it's so well written and it's so well pieced together. It's an incredible ghost story that doesn't rely on scaring you. It relies on the story itself, and the ghosts are just a part of the story. And I think it adds so much strength to it. It's what more people need to see it. Just people go find this movie. It's so good.
It's a movie that I've heard talked about a fair amount, and I've definitely seen that still of the kid in the
mask,
burlap sacks mask. Yeah. But watching the trailer to refresh my memory, I get a different vibe than how you're describing it, because they're selling it as a very scary movie,
and it's
not just like a meaningful emotional movie,
and it's
ghost set.
But that tends to happen, right? Where the trailers for any movie, like if there is a supernatural element to any film, the trailer is going to try and sell it as terrifying. This movie will scare the shit out of you. This movie is the most haunting thing you'll ever see. And it never is. I think that may have been part of the downplay for The Orphanage, is that when you actually watch it, you realize it's not a horror film. Yes, there's ghost children, and ghost kids are kind of creepy just in general, but it's not scare the pants off of you. It's not that at all. It's a very human drama, and there just happen to be ghosts in it. It's just, but the acting, oh my God. The actress that plays the mom, she throws down some chops, and it's all in Spanish. And she talks at like 200 million miles a minute. It's especially on like the high emotion scenes. But her performance is one of those where you can tell she puts it all out there. And I'm sure as soon as they called cut, they probably had to just give her like, oh, just like, you have to let her decompress for a minute.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's so good. It's so fucking good.
I need to get around to seeing that. It's been on the list for a while. My number 5 is a movie from Canada, but it's in French, so counts. And Arabic. There's French and Arabic because it also partly takes place in the Middle East. It kind of goes both coasts, both sides. More than a couple of times in the last several years in particular, I've seen things online that allude to the fact that Denis Villeneuve is a great director, but he hasn't made that many movies yet, or he's only made 6 or 7 perfect films in a row. And that's not true, because before he made Prisoners, which I think everybody starts counting from, they're like, he made Prisoners, and then that's his first movie. And that's not the case. Before he made Prisoners, which is a phenomenal film, he made 4 foreign independent films, and the latest one, the one right before Prisoners, is the one that's my number 5. It's called Incendies. And it's, if you're a fan of his movies, even if it's just the sci-fi epics like Dune or Blade Runner 2049 or Arrival or whatever, you'll still have a lot to love in this movie. But I love it in particular because I hope he gets back to the smaller films like Sicario and Prisoners and all of that stuff. And this is very much that. So and normally I wouldn't say it's my kind of movie because it is very dramatic and emotional and relational and a sad generally movie. But because I'm a Denis Villeneuve fanboy, it drew me in for that reason. And it didn't disappoint because it is really, really good. He's masterful in the storytelling and the way that he does the whole movie. So it's about these twins and their mother dies. It's a boy and a girl twin, and their mother dies, and she says as part of her will, they need to find and deliver letters to their father, who they thought was dead, and their brother, who they didn't even know existed. And so they need to find these 2 people somewhere in the Middle East and deliver these letters in order to basically fulfill her wishes and put her to rest. And it takes place, I think, kind of generically somewhere in the Middle East. It's not very specific, but anywhere in the Middle East, it's always a shit show over there. So there's a lot of like conflict and war going on, and so as particularly the girl twin is kind of dropped over there, she's put in very dangerous situations, or ends up in very dangerous situations, and trying to find her brother and dad and all of this stuff, and kind of unraveling this mystery that she didn't even know existed. And she realizes that her mom lived a whole life before they came to Canada that she didn't know about. And so kind of learns new things about her mom, learns a lot of things that her mom went through. And I love how the story is told, because Denis Villeneuve doesn't come out and say it. He doesn't come out and tell you in particular much of anything, but it's all there. And so you piece it together and you feel very successful and smart about yourself by watching the movie and actually figuring out, if it was me in that situation, I would be incredibly grateful, have a newfound appreciation for what my mother saved me from. Like, she saved me from this life. She saved me from all of this danger and all of the other stuff that's going on. And so it's a beautiful movie, very, very intense. It does definitely deal with some very dark and heavy subjects, but I think he does an excellent job of it being just enough. It's never too much, never too heavy. You get the point, and you get the story, and you get the meaning behind all of these things, and you feel the weight of it, but you're not oppressed by that weight or overwhelmed by it at any point. And so it's just the right amount the whole way through. And so where the story itself, where it goes, will blow your mind. But once you get past that, once you get past kind of the mystery and the reveals of it, it has a lot more to say about what it means to be human and what it means to be a family and love each other and all of that stuff. So a very different kind of movie than what I normally talk about, but it grabbed me. And I think I haven't watched his other foreign movies. I haven't watched Maelstrom. I can't even remember the two other ones, his first movies. But if they're as good as all those ones, they must be pretty great. Because this one is good.
I'm assuming this is going to be one of those movies when I watch it where I'm probably going to like tear up because I cry at every movie these days.
It has a couple. Weirdly, the ending is not the saddest to me. There's a part in the middle where she's on a bus with a little girl that did definitely make me want to cry.
Okay. Well, don't tell me too much.
Most of the movie is just intense.
Okay. Yeah. I will have to check that out.
And it's actually shockingly his highest rated movie on IMDb, higher than
I was just seeing that, yeah.
Yeah. Unless you count Doom Part 2. Yeah. But that is so new, it may come down some.
All right. Yeah. Man, Jake, you've given me a couple I have to check out. I like it. All right. Yeah. My number 4 is probably the one movie that I have been waiting to be able to talk about since the inception of this show of ours.
Wow.
I always feel bad for this movie because I think it was so overshadowed by a movie that had come out years beforehand, but it was compared to it, and understandably so. It's made by the same company. It even stars one of the same people. And there's some elements to it that are very similar. But I've always felt that this is a stronger movie than its predecessor, or than the one that it was always compared to. I think it's just a beautiful movie. It is unique. So it's in China, you know. I don't want to call it ancient China, but old China. Where there is this group who is kind of like the Robin Hood and his Merry Men version of kind of rebelling against the corrupted government. They rob the rich, they give back to the community. But the movie never shows any of that. That is just, you're told this real quick, and the rest of the movie is really just about the government's kind of sting operation, their undercover operation to try and flesh out this group so that they can kill them all. That's the point. Okay. And so the whole movie is really just, you don't see heroics at all. You only see this undercover operation kind of in hand and how it plays out. But my number 4 is The House of Flying Daggers.
Yeah.
I think it's such a beautiful movie. And the more the story progresses, you kind of learn real quick, like, oh, it's not just, corrupted government trying to infiltrate and draw out the flying daggers. It's a love story at the same time. So it has like a Romeo and Juliet kind of aspect to it, where the undercover officer is falling in love with his target, and she in turn is falling in love with him as well. And she's blind, just to top it off. And the way their story moves forward and the ending of the movie, like, the movie's beautiful, but the final fight and the whole finale of the film is the music, the cinematography, the sound. It is, to this day, one of the most just like beautiful things I've ever seen. It is so great, which is odd choice of words if you've seen the movie, but It really is fantastic. But this movie has always stuck with me. I've always thought that it is a better written film than Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, even though I love that movie as well. But this one just seems, I guess, more accessible because it still has kind of like the hyper, I don't want to say like lore of martial arts being able to like give people special powers, like floating on top of bamboo and all this, but that is a aspect in the story. But it's just, the movie is patient in telling the story, and it doesn't just rely on the martial arts or rely on a fight scene. It lets it be where it needs to be, and it's just incredible watching these characters go through it, because you kind of don't like a lot of the characters in it, and you learn like, oh, there's like no heroics in the story. So it challenges you on who or what you're actually going to root for. I adore this movie so much. House of Flying Daggers. Oh, so beautiful.
Yeah, it's definitely, there's kind of, for me, there's 3 movies in that style, in that time period and everything. And Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon is a huge one. And this one, House of Flying Daggers, is incredible. But I completely didn't even think of Hero, which I think is perhaps my favorite. It's not quite like a martial arts movie, but I guess it kind of is. But I just love the color and the and the style and the different layers of the story for Hero. So maybe an honorable mention for me as well. That's a great choice for sure.
Yeah.
My number 4 is my Japanese movie.
All right.
And shares a similar theme, I guess, from your last one, which is an anti-government slant. Although it's set in the early 2000s or late 90s or both. So my number 4 is Battle Royale.
The movie that is like inspired kind of a whole franchise. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Whole franchise of all of the Battle Royale video games that you've ever heard of kind of come from this. It also basically had to have inspired the Hunger Games books, because they're the exact same thing. So it's about these kids who are taken from their schools and put in on this island and need to kill each other and only one of them can win or survive. And they do all the exact same things as the Hunger Games. Like, you need to, at the end, like every morning they announce who had died and all of that stuff. There's a boy and girl for each number. So there's a number 1 girl, number 1 boy. And Japanese government captures 42 ninth graders, these like 15-year-old kids, and ships them off to an island. And they have 3 days to kill each other. And they're authorized to do this because of some new Battle Royale Act, a new revolutionary legislation that passed to like curb juvenile delinquency. Like, these kids are they're not being respectful to adults, and they're not attending school, and they're, just getting out of hand. We need to control these kids. And so we'll do that by scaring them and killing them off until we basically wipe out a whole generation, it seems like, is their goal. But it's really brilliant, and I love the kind of the story around the movie. The movie is incredible, and I'll get to that in a second. But the story around the movie, it was released with an R15 plus rating, which is rarely used in Japan, and it's primarily because it's based on a book, and the Japanese parliament tried to ban the book, and then the movie came out and they tried to ban the movie, and then it came out in 2000, but they didn't get like any distribution around the world for 11 years because the Japanese distribution company just wouldn't sell the rights to any US distributors, and they didn't want the legal problems of doing all of that. And so it didn't come out in North America until 2011. And it was controversial for sure. I think it got such a high rating and a lot of heat because it's about these kids being very violently killed off and killing each other, and the cast is pretty much entirely 15-year-old kids, and so it's done. It feels pretty early 2000s. Like there's definitely things that style wise it feels like it takes place in the early 2000s, and which I don't mind. I think it's great and fun. And I also love, I think I've brought it up on the show a couple of times, I love movies and stories with the like most dangerous game premise of somebody dropped on an island, now they're being hunted, they need to like survive or fight back or whatever. And this is basically that entirely. But the way that they're killed off and the way that they have to fight and the choices they make is fantastic. And they're all kind of given random weapons and objects and stuff, and kind of the main two, this boy and this girl, he has like a pot lid, like a lid from a pot, and she has like binoculars, and there are other kids running around with like guns and crossbows and swords and stuff, and so they're kind of screwed, but they start to like, they try to form things and work together. And so if you're a fan of Hunger Games, I think you should definitely see the original, which is Battle Royale, and it's a lot of fun, but also has a lot more meaning than I think even other movies in the same exact genre have actually pulled off.
All right. Yeah, you hear about Battle Royale a lot. It's one, I have not watched it, but I have heard about it so much. You've told me about it numerous times, especially when the Hunger Games first started coming out and like kind of took on the popularity that it did with just the books. And then when the movie started coming out, it was kind of funny because it didn't take long for people who have seen Battle Royale to be coming out and being like, hold up. You hold on. You should watch this instead, or with it, because this is the original. This is where you need to go. So I'm kind of disappointed in myself that I haven't gotten around to watching it, but I will have to remedy that. Yes.
Yeah, you'll enjoy it when you do.
I'm sure. All right, my number 3, I think you and I have talked about several times, actually, over the last 4 years. But I've never had it on a list until now. This is from Indonesia, and it is perhaps one of the most intense films ever. At least you think so until you watch the sequel, which takes the intensity in the story and just perfectly builds off of it and amps everything up to 11. Props to those of you that get that reference. There was no way I was going to have its sequel listed on a previous list for favorite martial arts. I have to have the first installment on this list, but The Raid Redemption is this movie. Every time I watch it, and I watch it a lot. It is always just so exciting and intense, and you are sucked into this world, and it's like it always puts me in that same mentality I was like the first time I saw Training Day. They have similar openings, and then the intensity of the film, they're very similar in that aspect, where the whole movie you were just like, I literally can't tell if they're going to kill off this hero that I am rooting for. Like I am so invested in him, and there's a good chance he's not walking out of this situation. I love this movie so much. I mean, the fight scenes are mind-boggling good and crazy.
It's what everybody talks about.
It is. But I do love that aspect. I mean, it is like the primary thing, but I just love this idea of survival in an absolute like death trap. There is no way you're walking out of this place without injury, and if not, you're not walking out alive. But I love the added drama to it of the whole reasoning behind uh, behind the main character going on this mission, and the whole subplot of what it means emotionally, and like family and connection and all this with the brother. What an incredible film. Yes, the action needs to be talked about. Yes, it needs to be with the biggest audience there can be, but the story of it is incredible. And I love going with the sequel, how it just takes everything you were invested in this movie, and it just builds it so perfectly and shows you so much more of this world that kind of scares you even more than you thought possible. But the Raid is one of the most effective action thrillers I think we've gotten really in 15 years, when it come out 2012 or something like that.
2011. Yeah, it's insane how everybody has certainly talked about how monumental the action sequences are, and it has basically transformed how action is done since then. But even now, watching it 13 years later, if you were to watch it for the first time, you would be like, I'm still seeing things I've never seen before. Like Hollywood hasn't even caught up to where the Raid was 13 years ago. And it's the action is incredible. The things that they do are mind blowing, but also as a complete story, it's so perfect because it gets you invested in that main character immediately, and you care so much about his survival, and it builds up so perfectly before you get to the action. There's so much suspense of, I know shit's going to pop off, but when and where is it going to happen? And there's so much tension in it, and it's so incredible. So yeah, you can't have a foreign film list without the Raid because it's defined so much of what we love, and it's perfect. It's absolutely perfect. Okay, my number 3 is our crossover of Parasite, and
damn, you have it real high.
I do have it really high because I really, really loved it. I thought it was phenomenal. Exceeded all my expectations. Like, it's one of those movies that you see and everybody's kind of talking about it. I'm like, it's probably fine, or I'll be like, it's not as good. It doesn't meet the hype and all that stuff. But I actually do think that it's as good as people say. It's always debatable if it's actually the best movie of 2019, because there were actually a lot of good movies in 2019. But like I said, I don't think anybody really can disagree too strong because of how good Parasite is, and how, like you mentioned, how unique Bong Joon-ho's eye is for his storytelling and his visuals. And it's brilliantly done. And the family themselves, the way that you kind of believe that they are the heroes of the story. They're these poor family living in poverty, and kind of decide to start like taking jobs to try to make money just to feed themselves, and then with the hope of someday pulling themselves up out of that. But the way that they do it, and the way they kind of con their way into this rich family's lives, and all of them taking different jobs, and kind of encouraging the family to hire them in all these different ways. They do. I love the title of Parasite because they do start kind of leeching off of the family and their resources and everything, and taking advantage. And then you start wondering, are they the heroes or are they not the heroes? And then I think the thing that grabs people the most is the craziness, because the movie definitely does turn and go down a path that I don't think anyone expects. And so many different things happen, especially in that last act, and it gets so crazy, and it's so unpredictable. But even beyond that, once all of the unpredictableness is over, you're still left with that story of the actual family, and caring about the characters, even if they've made questionable decisions or done questionable things. The way that it closes, the way the movie closes, is so satisfying.
Yeah.
And I think that that's the feeling that you're left with, is we went on a crazy ride and a crazy adventure, and it kind of ended up being a broader scope than you expected, taking more time than you expected, but it closes in such a satisfying way. And I love that. And I think maybe it just scratches an itch, and I put it super high up there for sure, for that reason. And I think the quality and the depth of the quality of the pictures and the movements and everything technically is phenomenal. The depth of the movie is definitely feels like a precursor to Squid Game, like the meaning and weirdness and depth of Squid Game that came out a couple years later, from South Korea as well. I think that this is, if you liked that, you will like this for sure.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, it's Parasite really is just it's an incredible movie all around. I had only known the director from like making the monster films, right? And to see this was such a like unique experience for me. I don't know if it was kind of shown to be like not straight horror, but kind of like a weird thriller story or whatever, like high intense thriller. Mm-hmm. But I remember going into it thinking that was what I was supposed to be in the mindset for, and that's not exactly the movie you're going to get, or at least not in the way you think. But yeah, that last act, it's one of the few movies that made me audibly react to so many things that happen in the final act. It's one of those movies where you're just like, oh shit, oh what, oh shit, oh shit. Oh, it's
absolutely
so good.
That's accurate.
It's so good. All right, number 2. Wow, I feel like we went through this one pretty quick. All right, go us. Well, Jake, you mentioned at the start that you specifically left off a handful of things.
Yes.
Well, have no fear, because I did not.
Good. Thank goodness.
This movie was and still is such a important part of my fandom with martial arts, with this actor, his style of movies, his style of action, and just childhood. I mean, this was one of the earliest movies I saw of him, and I saw the dubbed version, and then when I got to see like the actual Chinese version and hear his actual voice and see what his lines actually are, it was very much like, oh, this movie just got like 1,000 times better to me. It is such an awesome freaking movie, and it never stops. I mean, the opening has one of the craziest stunt setups I think ever, and it happens 10 minutes into the film. It's so good. So my number 2 is Police Story by Jackie Chan.
Yeah, I knew you were going to say that.
It is, holy shit, what a movie. I mean, the fight choreography, everything in this movie, when I was rewatching it, like in the mindset of our show, which I think we can both agree, you kind of we watch movies a little differently when we're prepping with it, because we're looking for all the different, like, all right, you're hitting this, that's what I need from you, what tidbits can I learn from this one, yada yada. Rewatching it with that mindset and watching it for like, obviously you're going to get the stunt choreography, and because it's Jackie Chan's team. I don't think this movie gets near the credit it deserves, and that is a crime. The stunts in this movie are off the charts. I mean, he drives 3 cars through a village down the side of a mountain, and it's people driving the cars through explosions.
Right, through real buildings.
Buildings down the side of a real mountain and crashing it into the road below. He's in one of the cars that they do this with. And then the fights, just all the Jackie Chan gags that he's known for throwing in with, they're using real world props and as a weapon or as his defense. But Police Story in general, like just the movie itself, the story of it, it was kind of fun watching like a crime movie, especially a Chinese crime movie that doesn't take place in like ancient China.
Right.
Martial arts and Chinese up to the, I've always I feel like, and that's probably wrong, but generally it's like ancient China, that's where the martial arts really is, unless you watch like an American movie that has, a Chinese guy in it and he's going to do kung fu. You just know it's going to happen. But this was cool to see like an actual detective story, this police story, and how he's a hero at first, and then he's kind of turned into a villain without actually being a villain, and then he's got to figure it out so that he can clear his name. And in the mix of it, you get some of the funniest Jackie Chan gags and just the quirky little things that happen. It's
this like there's stunts like the hillside and the mall, but then there's stunts like the phone in the office, and you're like, it's not a fight. It's just Jackie Chan trying to operate a phone, and it's the most incredible thing you've ever seen.
And it's even down to like one of the silliest stunts that is in the movie, which is him pulling his girlfriend off of her moped. The whole moped, I laugh out loud every time I watch this movie. First he pulls her off, and then the whole like he lifts it and then lets her go so that it's out of control. It's dude, Police Story. It's so perfect. There's not one thing wrong with this movie. If you're a Jackie Chan fan and you haven't seen Police Story, you are not a Jackie Chan fan. It's
like eating your meat and potatoes. You got to start there.
You have to see Police Story. It is perfect, and it's interesting. You are rooting for him. You see like the trouble that he gets in, and when he's kind of villainized at one point, like you genuinely root for him throughout the course of the film. And it's interesting to see, like, you brought it up with Anatomy of a Fall, of seeing another country's kind of court system and how they handle police work and all this. Same goes for Police Story, where I was watching and was thinking like, oh, this is still interesting. The court case is it's pretty similar to American, but like the way that they go about the police work in general is different, and how
just the logistics is interesting.
I just love this movie. There's not one bad thing in it. It is it's like it should be my number one, but it's not. So
no, that's fair. My number two is, so I said I wasn't going to have any martial arts movies. I was going to try, and I did try, but I had to have one. But it's not any that was on my top 10 martial arts, but I think it was on your top 10 sequels. In fact, I think you brought it up recently in this conversation.
Yeah, I did.
Also from Indonesia, my number two is The Raid 2, Barandal. And you set it up exactly how I would set it up, because The Raid is perfect but very isolated, very closed, and that's part of why it's great, is that it's small and encapsulated. But The Raid 2 Barandal just blows it up. Like, it expands the world like crazy, and it's just like, it's like the difference between John Wick 1 and John Wick 2 if John Wick 1 was all in one building and then you had John Wick 2. Because The Raid 2 Barandal is just, it turns this little awesome action martial arts movie into a epic story. Really, like everywhere that it goes and everywhere that it's just like a crime, kind of like a mob epic story, and there's no other way to describe it. And nobody talks about how incredible, besides you, obviously you love it, and you say I adore it so much. But I also find it so fascinating, not only that it's from Indonesia, and you don't see that many martial arts movies from Indonesia, but particularly that Gareth Evans wrote and directed it, who is a Welsh guy. Like, he's from Wales. And that's random. And so I was so curious why this like British dude got sucked into Indonesian filmmaking and starts making all these movies. And apparently he was hired as a freelance director for a documentary about this Indonesian martial art. And I don't know how to say it, Pencak Silat or something. And then he just became interested in it, and he discovered the star of the raid, Iku Uwai, or whatever his name is. He leads the raid, but he cast him first in the movie before that, Merantau, in 2009. And he just kind of started doing it. He's like, this is awesome, and I want to make movies in Indonesia now. And so he does, and it works brilliantly. And so the Raid 2, I mean, you can't, I don't even know how you talk about how great it is without saying, just go watch it.
You really do.
It is really just a movie that you need to watch. You don't really need to see the first one, because the first one, I mean, I think it recaps enough, and you know the story of the character by the time you're 2 minutes into the movie anyway. And like I said, because the scope is so broad and sprawling, and it goes so many different places, you're just kind of along for the ride. And it's just as much of a ride as the first one, if not more so. I would say definitely more so. That the action is bigger and broader, and there's more people involved, and more places, and more objects and things. It's much more, even more interesting. Even though you saw things you never thought you could see in the Raid, now you're seeing things in different places that you didn't even know people could use objects in those ways. It's amazing. So the Raid 2 Burndall is, I think, perfect, and as a pair they're phenomenal, but even on its own, it's perfect.
It's true. I think the Raid movies are in rare company. They might even be by themselves, where you can watch either one independently and they're both perfect, or you can watch Raid and go into Raid 2 and your mind is going to be fucking blown, and you're probably going to feel kind of exhausted, because that's the thing with both of these movies. By the time the end credits roll on both of them, you are physically tired from just watching it. And you're like, you feel like you can take some heavy breaths and really breathe in general, because you're just like, oh, holy crap, what did I just...
Yeah. And the Raid is an hour and 40 minutes. And like I said, there's some slow, tense, very suspenseful buildup in the beginning, but then it is pretty much mostly
then it's nonstop for the remainder of the film.
Yeah, very tight the whole movie. The Raid 2 is that epic 2.5 hour length, and it definitely opens up, lets it breathe, lets all of these other things happen, and it uses all of those 2.5 hours. It doesn't feel long, but you definitely feel, I just watched an epic thing.
Yeah. And you kind of brought it up of like, the first Raid shows you stuff, fighting styles in particular, and speed that you've never seen before, that you're just like, holy crap, no one's ever going to make a fight scene that's going to be like crazier than that. And then the Raid 2 comes out and was like, that was warm up. Watch this. Yeah. And you're just left with this like brain melting, like, what the body's not supposed to move or flail about like it's doing in this scene. What is happening? Yeah. Raid 2. Both of them are just, they're perfect movies. They're incredible. I'm so glad that we like bookended. I think that speaks a lot for both of us.
Yep, they're phenomenal.
The coveted number one. I always love her number ones.
I
gotta say, Jake, you did not blur or cheat even near to the amount
We're not done yet.
that I expected you to. Oh, that's true. Okay. Well, either way, you have not done that near as much as I expected you to. So props to you, good sir. Props.
I tried really hard.
I'm proud of you. All right. My number one was Police Story for the last 3 years.
Okay.
Just when when we started the show, I kind of like Police Story is always going to be my number one. I figured, your lists are going to change here and there, but I was like, it's so strong for me that it's never going to get bumped.
Yeah.
And then we decided to watch a movie last year, and this will be no surprise if you've listened to our show. That just floored me, and there's not really much new things for me to say about it, but every now and again a movie really does come along that just speaks volumes and just immediately, for me at least, and for movie lovers or whatever, but for me in particular, every now and again a movie comes along that it's very like, I take it very personal and understand like, oh shit, this movie's hitting different levels that I am either not prepared for or let alone expect. And Seven Samurai was that movie. I cannot get over this fucking movie. It is. I'm like, this movie just shattered so much of what or how I watch movies and how I view things in everyday life. Like, when I call it a humbling experience, I'm not kidding. This movie shook me, and it was just, I've watched it so many times since we did that episode of watching it the first time. Every time I watch it, I am just constantly like, oh my God. Oh my God.
It's so cool that this movie has just been out there in the world since 1954, and we had no idea how incredible it was, and then randomly watched it last year, and it just changes your whole life.
It really did. It had such a profound impact, and I can go into all those details, but that's for a different time. I couldn't deny it. I was like, when I was actually like setting up the 10 list, right? I had it playing just to kind of get into the mind frame of foreign films, and I was watching it, and the scene that gets to me every time is his big breakdown where you finally understand his character, and he has that venting session in the stall. And I was just like, Jesus Christ, this movie's gonna like, this is
this dude you thought was a dick the entire time, and you're like, oh no, I all of a sudden love you.
Like, I love you, and I am in complete understanding of you. Oh dear God. And now you were calling me out on all of my own shit. Like, that's what Seven Samurai does. And then the cherry on top is the beauty of it and the spectacle of it, because it does have all of that. But it just it's been a while since a movie's hit me that hard, dude. And it just
Yep. No, I get it for sure. It was one of the first movies I wrote down too as a possibility, and then I was like struggling because I was like, well, we did do a whole episode on it. Like, what else is there to say? But it is way, way up there as far as influential in my life, foreign movies, and so I completely agree with you.
Yeah, so it takes number one because, unlike the rest, it hit such a deep chord. I couldn't not have it there. So
yeah, that's awesome. That's so awesome. I'm so glad. Yeah, I agree. My number one it's not a huge cheat. I'm not going to blow your mind with this cheat, but it is a little bit of a cheat. It's a Danish movie from a Danish filmmaker, but it is in English, and it stars Mads Mikkelsen, and it's called Valhalla Rising. It's from 2009. Came out right before Nicholas Winding Refn did Drive. He did this movie, and Valhalla Rising is one of those movies that I have like a very unnatural adoration for this movie. Like I love it, like to the point where I feel like it's a part of me. Like I will just put it on, and I'll just feel like the peace of it. Like it's not a peaceful movie. There's a lot of death and blood and guts, and it follows Mads Mikkelsen's character. They just call One Eye. He's like a slave guy that they have tied up and want to have fight to the death. And it's a Danish movie. It takes place kind of in Middle Ages, kind of Viking style, Viking times, but the way that it's done, and this so One Eye is a pagan warrior, and he's captured by all of these crusaders, Christian crusaders, who are wanting to go on this quest to the Holy Land. And so he kind of gets drug along. He's got all these like tattoos and stuff. He looks very, very cool, and he's very, very good at being violent, and definitely is, as he murders dudes with his chains and other random weapons. But the style of this movie is everything that I would want from a 1500s pagan Nordic, but also like Christian Crusade epic. It's very colorful. It's everything that you would expect from like Nicholas Winding Refn. Not only if you've seen Drive, but if you've seen like The Neon Demon or Only God Forgives or things like that. It's very colorful, very unique style, very unique compositions of sky and his use of color, particularly if you've seen like Bronson. He did Bronson with
Tom
what's
Hardy.
his face from that one movie? Tom Hardy, thank you. The way he does that, where he kind of uses different colors, uses negative space, uses all of these very interesting tricks. It's so beautiful. And also, like I mentioned, I feel at peace because it's kind of quiet also. Like there's not a lot of dialogue in the movie. It's a lot of just these guys existing and being around each other, and the tension of the potential for violence, because they're all very violent people, but also kind of the unity and harmony with the nature around them, kind of just the simple life of that time period of ancient times and living off the land. And so I cannot express how much I love this movie. And I don't know anybody else that's even liked it, let alone loved it. But it has to be at the top of my list. And if you like any of those things or the sound of those things, I recommend you check it out because it's an awesome, awesome movie.
You have, I think you've brought it up on the show before, but just in general conversation, and we've known each other for a long time now. I remember you talking about this movie pretty much from as far back as I can remember, which might not actually be accurate, but I feel like you have always talked about this movie, and I have failed you so bad for not sitting down and watching it. I was watching the trailer while you were talking. I think I did that every other time you've told me about it.
You're like, oh yeah, that's
and it's good. Always one that I'm like, God damn, I need to watch this because it looks cool as shit. I need to just sit down and watch it. I think it's so cool how you describe it, where when you put it on, you feel like it's a part of you or you're a part of it. It's like it's you. You know me, man. I get excited when people talk about connections to movies on such a like deep level like that, because that's how I feel with the majority of the films I watch. I love that you have that, and I love that it's It's a perfect kind of movie for you to have that connection with. The only thing that makes it maybe not perfect is that it's not a Western, but it is like wilderness survival paying it, grimy and gritty and gross. So it still works. That's what a great movie for you to have that connection.
I think the Vikings were the cowboys of the whatever ancient world.
I'm sure that works on some level. It's disturbing on all counts, but that's so awesome, Jake. I love that, dude.
Yeah.
Oh man, so that's that.
There you go. Our top 10 foreign movies.
Films. All right. And we still didn't cheat near as much as I expected. No. So
I tried really hard not to, and I feel good about it. I feel at peace. I don't feel like I pulled any fast ones too much. So I think we did very
well. Yes.
Are there any you almost had on your list? Honorable mentions?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to bring it up again because it's just too incredible and awesome of a movie. But Troll Hunter is just, it's so good. People go watch Troll Hunter. Another one actually from Norway. It's another zombie movie. I think it's funny that you and I had some zombie talk today. But there's one that is kind of a comedic zombie movie from Norway. It's called Dead Snow. It's about a group of friends who go to a cabin and accidentally awake Nazi zombies.
I was going to say, I've seen the cover and I think Nazis.
Yes. They're zombie Nazis in it. It's a pretty entertaining movie. Nice. Old Boy from Korea, if you want to watch a movie that will fuck with your head in every possible level. Old Boy is the movie for you. And you just mentioned it, actually. Bronson.
Oh, yeah.
Man. It is probably, I think I'm always going to say this, it's probably the most underrated performance from Tom Hardy. The dude is incredible at his craft, but if you want to see him just fully encompass a character, Bronson is that movie. And it's such a weird movie too. The style of it, the dialogue, everything in it is different, but Bronson would have to be up there.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's good.
Nice. I have a couple legit honorable mentions that I was going to throw out there, but I also have ones that, like I mentioned before, I haven't watched as many foreign films as I feel like I should have. And there are ones I've heard about that I'm like, I need to get around to it. And I feel like I would like, but I haven't watched yet. So a couple of those are, I really want to see Infernal Affairs, the 2002 Hong Kong movie.
How have you and I not seen Infernal Affairs? We're such fans of The Departed.
Yeah. Okay. It's Departed is a remake of that. We need to get around to that. Because of how much we loved Seven Samurai, I'm like, I need to see Akira Kurosawa movies. I've not watched any of them. And there's a movie called Ran in particular that I've seen stills, I've seen clips, and just the style and color. It looks beautiful. It looks incredible. And so that's kind of at the highest on my list to watch. It's his version of Shakespeare's King Lear. Oh. And I don't love Shakespeare stuff or Shakespeare inspired stuff, but I'm interested in this particularly because I love Akira Kurosawa samurai stuff. And also I really love, it takes place, I think he did it in the 80s. I think he did it like 30 years after Seven Samurai, but it kind of takes place in that interesting period where you have samurais who are very traditional with swords and stuff, but then they also like are adopting rifles and stuff also. And so it seems like a war epic. It looks very, very, the stills and stuff are just beautiful. I haven't seen any Tarkovsky movies from Russia. And I hear a lot of people say good things about him. They look beautiful. But Mirror, the movie Mirror in particular, looks really, really good. All of the stills and stuff look like artwork to me. So those are the ones I feel like I would like if I ever get around to them. The ones I know I do like and almost made it on my list are Insomnia, which I thought you might have as the movie that Christopher Nolan remade with in Alaska with Al Pacino and Robin Williams. There's a Stellan Skarsgård one in, I want to say, Norway or Sweden.
It'd be
one of those.
Sweden, I think.
Yeah, it must be Sweden. That's good. I Saw the Devil is a South Korean.
Oh shit!
Like, yeah. I had like, at one point I had like 3 or 4 different South Korean movies on my list, and I was like, I need to spread the love around. I have too many. But I Saw the Devil is a really interesting movie about this secret agent who is trying to get revenge on like this serial killer, and he's capturing and releasing people and kind of wondering if he is becoming the villain or not. It really interesting. So I highly recommend that. And then an Australian movie, kind of more on the horror end. There's a horror Australian movie called Lake Mungo, which is kind of more mockumentary style. Not mockumentary. It's not funny. It's a very serious horror movie. But it's about like this family and kind of their tragedy around this lake, and really interesting, really well done. So I think that's my list.
Not a bad list.
We'll go with that.
All right.
And of course, Seven Samurai counts for me too.
Yeah.
As an honorable mention. That was incredible.
Oh man, I really love the list. It'll be weird watching English movies again.
It'll feel like easy mode because I can listen and not watch if I really have to and not miss anything.
It's true.
Yeah, it will be weird.
Well, it
makes me wish I knew other languages, like I could actually watch a foreign language film without subtitles. That would be ideal. I would love that. But also, I'm not going to do the work of learning another language just in order to do that. I'll just use subtitles.
Like, yeah, I feel I would love to be able to speak some of these languages. Watching some of these movies was like, man, how crazy would that be if I just one day was like, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
That's not me mocking other languages. That's
it's me not knowing anything about how to do. That's the best way you could have done it. I would have been like some offensive. That's what I would have said.
But I'm like, man, I just don't know how I would even start to do that. And that's where my brain just goes, that's what subtitles are for. You're fine. And I'm like, you're right. I am. Okay. Yeah.
It's that English privilege.
Yeah. Well, tell us what your favorite foreign films are. If you agree with or can't believe we've left some off or think we're insane for including some. Or if you try to argue that our cheats or our blurred lines don't count, it'll make us laugh. We've been laughing pretty hard recently with reactions to shit we say. So keep it up.
Yeah. It's a great time. I am very interested in hearing recommendations in particular because I think it is a blind spot that I would love to hear really great movies from other countries, especially if you're from there and you're like, I love this movie. It's like not really distributed outside of the country, but if you can find it, it's great. I would love to hear those movies. I didn't have, and I realized it's a huge market and a huge part of the world and a huge movie industry, but neither of us had Indian movies.
No.
And I don't think I've even seen an Indian movie. I've been kind of like putting feelers out there. Like if we got into like a Bollywood episode, what movies should we watch? And I've gotten a couple recommendations, so we might do that at some point because I'm interested.
I had kind of debated for like watching new movies in prep for this. I was like, should I throw one out there at Jake and be like, I finally got around to watching a Bollywood film because I know neither of us have ever watched one. And then I didn't. In fact, I didn't watch hardly any new things. I got so caught up in this and then stuff that you and I were prepping for with like film versus film. And it was just like, well, didn't get around to it, but I think that is probably something that we're going to have to consider at some point.
Yeah.
So
I'm interested for sure.
So if you have recommendations, whether it's Bollywood or just any international film, because like Jake said, it's a blind spot for both of us. We welcome it. We want to see more of this stuff. And I think it's safe to say you and I have been on the better part of surprised over like, I don't want to say the quality of the film, but how much we enjoy the stories and the way that these stories are being told. I feel like we haven't ran into too many that we've been like, this is terrible, except for some that we watched last year at one point, but we don't need to go down that road. So,
only the most offensive movies ever made. Right. Yeah, those count.
But yeah, let us know what we should watch, and we might do that. So,
Yep.
All
right. What are we doing next time? I don't even know. Where are we? When does this come out? Hold on. Stand by.
I went to scroll down on my notes because I've had all of the like upcoming episodes listed out and kind of planned out.
Yeah.
And I realized for the first time since we've started this, I came to the end and was like, that's not right.
So next time we are talking about the Planet of the Apes movies, because Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes comes out end of March, and this comes out beginning of March or second week of March. So that's exciting. If you're hyped for Planet of the Apes, definitely be watching them. And we haven't even really talked about what that means. If that's just going to be the new franchise, or if it's the entire scope of Apes movies.
You would think 4 years in we would have a better structured idea of how we do this, but the reality is, folks, it's usually a quick text to each other of, what are we doing?
It's mostly, should we do Apes movies? Yeah, I love Planet of the Apes. Sounds
cool.
Good. And then we're like, a week before, we're like, so I'm watching the 1965 version, right? And you're like, no. I'm like, oh, shit. But yeah, we probably will. I do love those old versions, so we'll talk about them too. But mostly need to get recaught up on the new ones, particularly with Matt Reeves and not doing the new one, but leading into the new one. They're all connected. So we'll get you caught up with everything you need to know.
Kingdom might end up being a pretty big film, so it looks pretty cool.
Looks like it.
It looks pretty cool.
Yeah, it looks interesting.
Very excited for that. And I know it's like a month away, folks. A little over a month at this point, I think. But you better be getting ready for Fog Day. So
Fog Day.
We're going to be plugging that for a little while. Y'all need to get ready for that. So
yeah, Fog Day is going to be great. First official Fog Day.
I like that we're starting these first official annual things recently.
Yeah, it's a good time. It's a big year.
Big year
2024.
All right, guys, we appreciate you. Thank you so much. Make sure you're subscribing and following and doing all that good stuff on all the socials. We really appreciate it. Keep commenting on the stuff. It is funny.
Yeah. We got in trouble for some stuff recently on TikTok, and we're not wrong. I'm not taking back what we said. We're definitely right, particularly about the Dune 1984 shields, how silly they look. But we were wrong that it was CGI. It's not CGI. They did some magical cell manipulation of the film, and but they could have done better because it looks like trash. But some people were very upset, and I get it, especially if it's nostalgic. That's a big part of it. It's not nostalgic for us. We just saw it for the first time ever, and we can't go back. So all we have is now. That's my whole thing. But I think it's very fun, very entertaining, and a lot of people do agree. A lot of people are like, "Yes, you're right." So we like hearing from you either way, whether you think we're stupid or not, whether you think we're the worst podcast ever,
which was one of the funniest things ever. It just, thank you for the laughs. I was eating lunch at Chipotle, reading these comments coming in, and laughed out loud in the quiet echoey room, and it was pretty funny not explaining to people and just being like, "It's don't worry about it."
You don't care about what I'm looking at. Yeah.
But thank you, everyone. We genuinely appreciate you. So keep it up. Keep spreading the word. It's pretty cool watching this growing and all that. So
yeah, it's great. All right, we will see you all next time.
Yes, we will. All right.